Good afternoon, Trump family. Welcome back to my channel. Hope you having a great weekend and God bless you. Alright, the following is a collection of news from Patriots. Let's get into the news. And some good news. A U.S. District Judge, Judge Stephen D. Merriday, late yesterday granted a class-wide injunction that prohibits the Marine Corps from enforcing Biden administration's military injection mandate against or discharging Marines who filed for religious exemption from the mandate and who were denied. This is a huge win, an absolutely huge win, for the Marines, for us, for the civil and personal liberties, and for religious rights and religious freedoms. The injunction gives relief to Marines who were affirmed by a chaplain as harboring a sincere religious objection to the injection, submitted a request for religious accommodation, were denied, and who appealed and were denied or will be denied after an appeal. Merriday wrote in his order that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin et al. And the rest of them are preliminary enjoined from enforcing against a member of the class any order, requirement, or rule to accept CV injections, from separating or discharging from the Marine Corps a member of the class who declines objection, and for retaliating against a member of the class for the member's asserting statutory right under Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So this ordered by Merriday as the Marine Corps to the branches of the military blocked by court orders from taking punitive action towards those who have sought religious exemptions from the mandate. So far, we've got the Navy and the Air Force who were also blocked from taking action against service members and who have sought relief from the objection on the basis of their religious freedom. So the Army is always making fun of, oh, we're so bad as the Navy in the U.S. divorce, and, of course, the Marines and the Army. Look, my father is a retired Navy corpsman and I will be loved. Sailors love Navy culture. Yes. I'll say we, as having grown up in the Navy, we have the Navy SEALs, but I think the U.S. Army and the Marines have a lot more legitimate claim to ultimate badass hurry when it comes to the U.S. military. But come on, Army. Y'all need to step up. The Navy and the Air Force and the Marines have so far been given some relief from these mandates. So absolute good news for our Marines. Glad that you guys got it. Okay, let's move on to this absolute fail by our taxpayer-funded propaganda machine known as National Public Radio, NPR. They did a poll, and it didn't turn out too well. A majority of Americans say Joe Biden is allowing a southern border invasion. According to a poll commissioned by Left of Center, taxpayer-supported NPR, the 54% invasion majority includes 76% of Republicans think that what's happening on the southern border is an invasion, 46% of independents, and check this out, even more than a third, 40% of Democrats on NPR, which of course attracts some of the most hardcore leftists, are on the side of the rest of us that what we're seeing on the southern border is, in fact, an invasion. Only 19% of all respondents said the term is false. So that means 81% of respondents said that using the word invasion or southern border is a proper term to use. Of course, the pro-immigration folks like NPR journalist Who Well Rose lamented. Republican leaders are increasingly framing the situation as an invasion. Immigrant advocates say the word has long history in white nationalist circles, and warns that such extreme rhetoric could provoke more violence against immigrants, is committing violence against immigrants, the Mexican cartels, the drug smugglers, the child and women runners, they satanic, Ms. 13. And I don't know all of the Sinaloa and other LAN and all the other cartels in Mexico. Those are the ones who are wreaking havoc every single day, raping and pillaging and robbing poor, Central American, Haitian and other coming from the world. Heeding the call, the dog whistle of Joe Biden and his red carpet announcement. We looked at just really barely, Ivanka Trump related, mysterious death. We went over the newest laptop from Hellfiles on Hunter. We looked at some crazy evil TDs that has been exposed and some other things. Alright folks, I want to share 2 quick international stories. And don't think it isn't happening here. I share these things because it's happening here and it's easily proved. Over the past decade, the British government has registered over 50 illegal immigrants over the age of 30. As children, and as according to a Freedom of Information request. The Home Office over the UK, in an embarrassing revelation, show that the border officials were either so inept or indifferent as to register 5,052 grown adults over the age of 30. As children over the last decade, we've got doesn't seem like a lot. Do you think that that's all they've done? Do you think that's all they've done? Check us out. The Freedom of Information requests from the Daily Telegraph over the UK also revealed that 2021s have the highest number of alleged asylum seekers claiming to be children status, which increases the odds of the government granting an asylum request. According to the figures, over 1,500 people identified as adult migrants claimed they were children last year, and that was compared to 364 in the year prior. Now, with all of these things going on here on our US southern border, do you think that that's not happening here as well? How about this story out of China? A human rights organization called Safeguard Defenders published a report this week, charging the Chinese Communist Party with using psychiatric hospitals to imprison political dissidents. The report, entitled "Drunk and Detained China's Sick Psychiatric Prisons," said Chinese officials are sending petitioners and activists to psychiatric wards for medically unnecessary compulsory treatments. Some of the victims are left in these facilities for years on end. Oh, what about our political prisoners in the DC gulags? Who were simply protesting, were invited into the capital. But let me just tell you that the whole Governor Whitmer kidnapping plot was an inside job when the people in Lansing, Michigan were protesting against all of the virus lockdowns and the tyranny over there. It was the FBI, we learned, that let them into the state capitol. While the FBI sure seems to be involved in the lie in the plotting of and against US citizens. And then we've got this little story. Now when you look at the story yesterday, coming out of Arkansas, you're like, okay, that's interesting, it goes with what we already know, let me read you the story. But then let's get into a little bit more nitty-gritty, and you'll see what's really going on here. Little Rock. In a plea deal filed Wednesday, a former FBI agent pleaded guilty to paying a business to wipe his computer to make the hard drive unavailable for forensic examination. According to court documents, former agent Robert Sario was charged with corrupt destruction of records in an official proceeding in connection to the corruption trial. Our former state senator John Woods of Springdale should think, okay, this is a former state senator from Arkansas, a former FBI agent. Okay, that's not a big deal. But then you get into it. John Woods was a pro-Trump, and former Arkansas State Senator John Woods was the first elected official in the state to endorse President Trump in 2016. 2 years later, District Judge Timothy Brooks of the Western District of Arkansas' sentence was to serve 18 years in federal prison. In addition to 3 years of supervised release, and ordered was to pay $1.6 million in restitution. Okay. According to court documents, former agent Robert Cesara was charged with corrupt destruction of records and official proceeding in connection to the corruption trial of former Senator John Woods of Springdale. This audio said he erased the contents of the computer hard drive knowing that the court had ordered the computers be submitted for forensic examination. I did so with the intention of making the contents of the computer's hard drive unavailable for forensic examination. At the time, and either the contents of the hard drive are relevant to an official proceeding in United States versus Woods. I currently performed and had performed the ratios with intent to impair the integrity and availability of the computer hard drive and its contents for use, and now the official proceeding. And what is alleged here, because mostly we're not gonna know this case, is Woods obtained funds for a Christian school in Arkansas, and the government says that the donation to the school was a form of fraud. And of course, we know that the government uses the term fraud for anything they don't like. So a man who put together a Christian school goes after him, destroys evidence that will ass in favor of John Woods, who was the first elected official to endorse President Trump. And here's the key. Here's the kicker, folks. Here's the punchline, if you will. The court has known about the illegal destruction of the evidence the entire time. And of course, we've got Mike Pence going, the rank and file the FBI are crazy people. How dare you criticize them? Alright, let's get into this very interesting chess move. Some folks don't like it when we call Trump doing things chess moves, it makes you a little sensitive. Hartfield better. This is called a checkers move. Okay. President Trump yesterday posted onto social, quote, memorandum on declassification of certain materials related to the FBI as Crossfire Hurricane investigation with a link to the government archives of the Trump White House. We covered this at the time. This is the day before the installation of the former vice president into his current post. Let me just read you section 1, just part of it. A reminder, Memorandum on this classification of certain materials related to the FBI as Crossfire Hurricane investigation under Law and Justice issued on January 19, 2021. This is a memo for the Attorney General, the Director of National Intelligence, and the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, subject declassification. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws United States of America, I hereby direct the following declassification and release. In my request on December 31, 2020, the Department of Justice provided the White House with a binder of materials related to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Portions of the documents in the binder have remained classified and have not been released to Congress or to the public. I requested documents so that declassification review could be performed, and so I can determine to what extent materials in the binder should be released in classified form. So in the various part of the section, President Trump is saying that he declared he requested back in December of 2020 these binders so he can determine which portions will be declassified. I determined that the materials in that binary should be declassified to the maximum extent possible in response as part of the iterative process of the declassification review. On your cover letter, the Federal Bureau of Investigation noted its continuing objection to any further declassification. So back in 2020 and early 2021, the FBI didn't want any of their crimes declassified. So here's the kicker in there, which President Trump is trying to bring our attention to, in this entire affair of the FBI arrayed against him, quote, I hereby declassified the remaining materials in the binder. This is my final determination under the classification review, and now directed the Attorney General to implement the redactions proposed on January 17 submission and return to the White House an appropriate redacted copy. He wanted the rest of the remaining parts in the binder declassified. And he accepted whatever redactions they had. It was all done and was all released. And President Trump is tweeting this out and having people go to the link and read it. So he knows that the materials was the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation had already been declassified. And that is what the FBI is after. And that is why Hayden, formerly of the CIA, set up all kinds of things, and of course, Brennan, and was working with Comey and what have you, that says that Peter Strzok was never really FBI. So, it's all about the Spygate documents. It's all about Crossfire Hurricane and the deep state targeting of President Trump from the moment that he reenacted the Simpsons episode from years ago and came down the escalator. Yes, Simpson has gotten some stuff right. But I think that's President Trump knowing that that episode was made and purposely mimicking that. That visual, that optic? I don't think it's any more than that. Okay. So there you go. Are we possibly going to see that there was CIA involvement with the FBI in those memorandum, and that's why when Chucky Schumer, as I reminded you and played you, yesterday, or the day before, when he said that if you go out to the intelligence community, they have 6 ways, till some. That's what it was all about. That's what President Trump wants to know, it's all about, and that's what the FBI is trying to hide. And then we have retired General Michael Hayden, who directed the CIA and who we named yesterday, was named by Steve Bannon, when he had Boris Epstein on the War Room talking about their both inside advisors, former advisors to President Trump, talking about those that are in these documents that the FBI is trying to hide and get from President Trump. One of those who's retired General Michael Hayden, who directed the FBI, the CIA and the NSA during his career. He's now a CNN puppet. Someone had tweeted out, I've covered extremism and violent ideologies around the world over my career, have never come across a political force more nihilistic, dangerous and contemptible than today's Republicans. Nothing close. To which General Michael Hayden on Twitter said, I agree, and I was a CIA director. So Michael Hayden, the advisor to misinformation watchdog, NewsGuard, agrees that the most dangerous, contemptible nihilistic group out there is a GOP, which means that they are more dangerous than Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, ISIS, ISIL, the Taliban and other actual violent extremists. Crazy. Attorney Alina Habba was with Newsmax's Rob Schmidt. And, you know, there's several ways that you get this out in the public, when you're reporting what's really going on. You can be strong about it, you can use a chess move like President Trump going, hey, let me remind you of this executive decision I made to declassify, and let me post an archive the day before Joey was installed to remind you of this. And then you have the other surrogates taking a different stance. And what Trump attorney Alina Habba was on Newsmax doing just doesn't make sense. We were cooperating with them the entire time. And making this case, let me just share these 3 points that she made. She said there are 3 allegations: concealment, espionage, and destruction. All of these don't make sense because he was cooperating the whole time. If we were concealing it, we wouldn't have allowed them to come in, the FBI to come in at Mar-a-Lago in June. If we were destroying it, we would have added the padlock. So they asked us back in June to put on, and we wouldn't have given them 15 boxes in June. And if it was espionage? Well, the president has different privileges. He has executive privileges. And they have been in place since Bush should be put in place. Obama used, but no one talks about, because if it's Trump, they like to bring these antiquated statutes and shove them down his throat. So she says that the concealment is bogus, the espionage is bogus, and the destruction claims are all bogus. But she takes a little different stance. It doesn't make sense to me making a point without getting argumentative about it. So there you have it, folks. And one last thing, and we'll wrap up here, about 2 things. But let's get through this, folks. It's Friday. We do have some news. Let me get through this. A reminder that the judge that allowed the FBI to raid President Trump's private residence donated $1,000s to Obama. And this is what we now have from Paul Sperry. Where is a May subpoena for Mar-a-Lago records, and where's the June inventory receipt of the FBI? The FBI would have given Trump lawyers, Cochran and Bob, who voluntarily handed over documents from Trump's storage to investigators. So this goes with what we just heard from Alina Habba. But this is a journalist asking the questions. Okay, if it's about concealment and espionage and destruction, let's see the June inventory receipts. Let's see these documents along with the affidavit. So we want to see what happened in this raid. But let's go back and see the other things from the June meeting with the FBI and Trump folks at Mar-a-Lago. He says to where's the June subpoena and inventory receipt? The FA were to furnish. Trump's lawyers, who voluntarily also handed over surveillance footage, did. Investigators Paul Sperry is calling for the release of those documents as well. Are we going to get them? Are they going to be fully redacted? Like we just saw right here? We've got shady people working in the government. And John Kerry wants to know about them. And guess what? We're paying their freaking salaries. Who did John Kerry hire to work in the office of Presidential Climate Envoy? And who are we paying for? Joe Biden's special presidential climate envoy John Kerry has been operating in secret for the past year and a half. Protect the public interest. Follow the FOIA lawsuit and efforts. Obtained emails between John Kerry's office and the various climate change groups. The emails turned over to the group from John Kerry's office were heavily redacted. And what did they redact? They redacted the name of every single one of John Kerry's staffers' names. Not one staffer's name was revealed. Fox News got the document from the Protect the Public Trust group. And they're saying it totally seems in the public interest. In fact, it appears the antithesis of serving the public interest to hide the names of government officials who are communicating with controversial outside activist organizations and are attempting to influence government policy. Once again, there's nothing even close to transparency when you have Marxists in office. Who were they scheming with? And who are these people that are scheming with these people whose salaries we are paying? Alright, thanks for being here, folks. Please receive a big hug from all of us. Let me know down below